Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. And this is lesson number 5, the last lesson to a wonderful pod. And of course, everything has been built on everything. So I hope you started with lesson 1 and continued through lesson 5, but they're all built on one another as you're seeing. The essential question has remained the same: is conflict necessary? By the end of this lesson, you should be able to identify the 6 parts of a plot and describe how conflict drives the plot of a story. We've kind of been digging into that throughout. But the 6 parts of a plot may be new to you. It was introduced in lesson 4. We're really going to explain it now in lesson 5. Please don't confuse this, the 6 parts of a plot, with the elements of a story. Okay, elements of a story are what a story has to have, and plot is one of those elements. So we're going to go into the 6 parts of a plot. When you open a book, when you read a story, when you watch a TV show, that's not a reality TV show. The plot has all of these elements, and you can get paid millions of dollars if you guys wish to write these shows and to make sure that all of your shows have these elements to them. Okay, this is what great writers do, whether they write for cartoons such as SpongeBob or whether they write for major TV shows, dramas, and comedies. So the first thing is conflict. We've been talking about conflict, and conflict is the fuel that starts the engine of a plot. Without conflict, there is no story. However, before we begin digging into some great literature and following characters on their journeys through conflict, which is what we're doing all year, we have to identify all the parts of a plot. So we have to understand how conflicts and characters develop. An author picks a conflict and then has to create characters to actually push this conflict through the story. That's how good writing happens. You pick a conflict, something you want to happen, that's dramatic, and then who's going to make it happen. This is what a plot line looks like. A plot line looks like a big mountain. You guys have seen this before because I know it's introduced early on. And basically the story has a beginning, which we know is the exposition. It's when you meet the characters and the setting. We have the rising action, and then the middle of the story, or the climax, the most exciting part, the most dramatic, the most problematic. And then things start to resolve themselves, called the falling action, and they get better towards the end, which is the resolution. Let's get into this. You should always highlight, bold, always be taking notes in class, but you knew that, right? There are the parts of the plot on the left side of this column, and then the definitions we're going to go through. All right, I want you to look at this. You guys can take notes so that you can further clarify any questions that you have. In the rising action, the conflict begins to develop, and it's generally the longest part of the story. It's what keeps us turning those pages. If you guys have picked up a book and you don't like it, it probably doesn't have a conflict or character you can identify with. That's really important. So, the exposition is the beginning of a story. Okay. Characters in a story have history, details about their pasts, and present lives. And it's important that readers know some of these details in order to understand the story. This is called the exposition. It is the background information where the setting is explained and the characters are explained. Okay? It's flat because nothing exciting is going on yet. We don't have to climb the mountain, we're just walking. Think of yourself as if you're running. This is just the part where you walk and you kind of introduce and you're getting your legs warmed up. Okay? Say the words inciting incident. These are kind of tough vocabulary, but an inciting incident, which many of you may know, is the action that makes apparent the first major conflict in the story. So it's something that causes something to happen. It incites. The word incite means to cause something to happen. It's the incident that causes something to happen. We've reviewed your 4 types of conflict: man versus man versus self, man versus nature, and man versus society. This is the one thing that happens that causes the rest of the story to take place. For example, in Cinderella, if Cinderella didn't want to go to the ball, there would be no story. So the fact that the evil stepsisters got invited to the ball in the movie Cinderella, the story Cinderella, that causes the whole story to take place. So think through the one conflict that takes place in the beginning of the story that causes the whole story to take place. That is called the inciting incident. Okay. Next, you have the rising action. The story, this is a long part, the story takes shape. Conflicts develop, they get complicated, more characters might get involved to complicate the scene. There's fun, confusion, surprise that may happen in the book or story. Generally the longest part of the story. The author takes time to develop the characters here, to develop the plot, to develop the setting, all leading up to the climax. But this is generally the longest part of the story. Okay? And again, if we're going to look at our mountain here, we're going to trudge uphill. This is where the most action happens. It's really building, building, building. You're going to get characters doing crazy things perhaps, or, twists in the plot that happen here, all leading to the climax. All right? So what's the climax? The climax is when the conflict of the plot is resolved. It's generally the most exciting part. It could be the bad guy dies, the good guy conquers evil, the shoe fits Cinderella, something good that happens or something bad that happens, because remember, conflict can be good or conflict can be bad. So the conflict is something referred to as the turning point, and the hero often defeats the villain. Okay, going back to our chart where we're climbing a mountain, this is where that all happens. The most exciting part, the page turner. You've been reading to get to that point at this. You've been reading to get to this part at this point. Okay, that's why you read a book. Okay. Well, after that, we have the falling action, where we've reached the peak of our mountain. Now we have to go down. So this is the easy part. After the most important events are over, there has to be some resolution. The author just can't stop writing there. So he or she starts to wrap up the story. And these are varying in length, okay? Some stories may end at the climax, and then usually there are sequels. If you guys saw not To Kill a Mockingbird, Hunger Games. There's sequels that happen. Some authors stop there if they're going to write more a series. But generally, single novels or single stories, this is where they continue to have the resolution. And then the resolution is the end of the story. It's the characters are resolved, the conflict's resolved, people are at peace, or there's a resolution to the original problem. In Cinderella, the shoe fits Cinderella, they get happily married. He finds who fits the shoe, puts it on her foot in the play Cinderella, or the drama Cinderella, and then it fits her foot. Okay? So let me go back to my chart, the simplified chart. You have the beginning, which is called the exposition, and then the problems introduced, the characters, and the setting. You have the longest part of a story, the rising action, where everything kind of gets developed. You learn more about your characters. You learn more about the problem. There can be twists and turns here that keep you on the edge of your seat. Then you have the climax, which is holy moly. There's either, lots of drama, lots of tears. It depends on what type of novel you're reading or piece of literature you're reading. The falling action is where the story gets resolved because we've had the climax. Things get better. And then you have the end, which is the resolution. Watch a TV show tonight. I'm going to challenge you to watch a TV show. It could be a half-an-hour cartoon. It could be a TV show not a reality show. Try to follow the parts of a plot as you watch this TV show tonight. Okay? And your checklist. Can you identify the 6 parts of a plot? Can you name them for me? Can you go back and name these? Okay? And if you can, you're ready to move on to the questions below this video, and then you have an assignment called Setting the Scene.